dangerous journey into the heart of the island of creation to seize control of his own fate and change the past. Except now, by complete chance, or perhaps by fate, these two old rivals will meet in battle. Two warriors who overcame death itself to be here. However, only one of them will get the opportunity to change his destiny. The Barbarian King wields a mix of extreme strength and power over necromancy in battle, a bit of straightforward smashing with his gigantic hammer, alongside some magical spirit attacks. He can even summon zombies from the underworld to come to his aid, and at one point, he actually summons the boat captain from the first game, the one Kratos killed in the prologue after the battle with the Hydra, who immediately cries out, "Oh no, not you again!" It's a fun little Easter egg. I love trying to imagine the adventure this guy has been on, what he had to
Metal
do to
Tronus,
escape
Attack
the
Veiler,
underworld, what terrible
Book of
monster he
Eclipse,
must have
Sword
vanquished
Ryziel,
in order to
Lacrima the
acquire
Crimson
these
Tears.
necromantic powers. I like to think there is some
I have
parallel
access to both
universe where the
engines, but at the
Barbarian
same
King
time,
won this fight,
I can
and
only
then went
access
on
one
to
with my
destroy the
normal
Greek
summon.
pantheon on
What
his
do I
own.
go for?
Unfortunately for
If
him,
I don't
nobody
know
ever gets
what
the
my
best of
opponent is
Kratos
playing.
twice, and this fight ends with him getting crushed by his own hammer. But hey, if he clawed his way
Going
out of the
Lacrima means
underworld
all we can
once,
do is end on
maybe he can
High
do
King
it again.
Caesar
There is
and
always a chance the
or
Barbarian King could return in a
Desiree.
future game, which honestly,
But
I think
Sword,
is pretty cool.
I
After
mean,
this
either
battle,
way,
Kratos
we
finds
were
himself
kind of
lost in
murdered
an
by
area
a
known
single
as the
hand
Bog
trap
of the
here,
Forgotten.
which our
A
opponent does,
dense,
which I
putrid,
don't have because I don't
monster-infested
run hand
swamp
traps.
filled with rotting
Whatever, let's go
corpses
Sword.
and bubbling pools of putrescent goo. It is actually one of my favorite areas in the game. It feels very atmospheric and mysterious to me. At the center of the bog stands the half-sunken, crumbling, and trap-filled temple of yyyy, which is the location of the fourth major boss fight in the game. Unfortunately, I cannot show you this fight, because this feisty, thick swamp madam has got her humongous tatas hanging out for the entire battle, and she moves around the arena so much that there is just no way I'm going to be able to keep them behind a sensor bar. So get used to staring at a blurry screen for a while. Yyyy is a Gorgon, which is a common enemy type in all of the Greek games. Gorgons are serpentine lizard women with snakes for hair and the ability to turn their opponents into stone. Think of Medusa. Yyyy is by far the biggest and fattest Gorgon in the entire series, and she's got the biggest tatas too. She uses her massive girth as a weapon, flopping and spinning around the interior of the temple, as well as firing off huge waves of petrifying magic. Though luckily Kratos acquired some equipment that allows him to deflect magic back in the swamp, so that comes in handy here. This can be an annoying fight, because if she manages to petrify Kratos, then his stone body can be shattered in a single hit. It is very possible to make a single mistake, instantly get shattered, and then have to start the whole fight over again. Kind of annoying, but a solid boss fight. The fight ends with Kratos tearing off her head, which he can then use as a tool to petrify his own enemies, just like in the first game. Afterwards, the player returns to the entrance of the bog and uses his new magic deflecting technique to break this wall, which allows the player to reach a new area called the Courtyard of Atropos. Atropos is the name of the second sister of Fate. Unlike the elegant Lachesis, Atropos has a very gothy and witchy sort of design. This ancient stone courtyard is going to serve as our hub for the next section of the game. The ultimate goal here
I
is
don't
to
know how to
disable
use
this
Eclipse
magical
Twins.
force field, which is preventing us from accessing the interior of the island. In the courtyard, it is also possible to hear a muffled voice calling for help. It seems that someone is trapped somewhere nearby. Who could it be? Well, after exploring around and solving some more puzzles, you will find out who it be. Kratos pops open this door and walks inside this pool area, and as the door closes behind him, Perseus appears, yet another demigod and legendary hero from Greek mythology. He is the slayer of Medusa and the founder of the city of Mycenae, as well as an ancestor of the more famous Hercules. Perseus is very upset that Kratos allowed the door to close behind him. He has apparently been trapped in this room for a very long time, However, if you notice in this shot of the room, there is no wall on the far end. It is just a series of open columns. As far as I can tell, Perseus could have left at any time. I've never been sure if this is a mistake or if Perseus is just completely brain dead. Either way, in his despair, Perseus goes on a long, rambling, self-important monologue in which he convinces himself that the Sisters of Fate wish for him to defeat Kratos in order to earn their favor. It is a fun cutscene because Kratos just kinda sits in the background and stares in silence, while Perseus does all the work by himself of getting himself worked up like a pompous doofus. And so begins the 5th major boss fight of the game. This is one of my favorites. I really like this one. In Greek mythology, the gods have a habit of giving their champions magical gifts, which the champions then use to defeat monsters and complete heroic deeds. Perseus is an entire boss fight designed around this concept of magical godly equipment. He exclusively wields these things in battle, and so what Kratos has to do is destroy each of these pieces of heroic equipment one by one, methodically destroying everything that makes Perseus a hero, until in the end he is just left an ordinary defenseless man. The first is a helmet that allows Perseus to turn invisible. You have to carefully watch the water to see where he moves, and then attack that location. After the helmet is destroyed, he still has a magical sword and shield, with which he fights very aggressively. Next we destroy the sword, at which point Perseus switches to a defensive fighting style using only his shield, which has the power to blind his enemies. But even that is not going to be enough to stop Kratos. The fight ends with Perseus impaled on this hook, which then lowers a chain, allowing us to return to the courtyard with his shield, which the player must use to reflect this laser beam, thus destroying the force field. Perseus is not a very difficult or flashy fight, but I find the concept of slowly wearing an opponent down, of methodically removing each of his abilities, to be very satisfying. The next major area we reach is called the Great Chasm, which is this massive canyon which separates the imposing and beautiful temple fortress home of the Sisters of Fate from the rest of the island. As Kratos steps out onto this shattered and ruined bridge, he is randomly met by yet another famous figure from Greek legend, Icarus, the boy who flew too close to the sun. In the traditional story, Icarus is a young, reckless boy who, overcome by excitement, forgets his father's warnings about flying too high, and after his wings are destroyed, he falls into the Aegean Sea and tragically drowns. In God of War 2, Icarus is a smelly and weird old man who has clearly lost his mind. This encounter is so
What the hell?
strange and bizarre that I'm not even really
Right.
sure how to describe it, so I'm just going to play it for you. Here it is.
Go back, warrior. There is no passage here. You will never make it across. You think you can, but you cannot. Do you hear me? It is my wings that will make it across. It is my test. Do you not know who I am? Have you not heard of Icarus? It is my fate to make it across. None other. This is my test. The sisters will grant me an audience, not you. You will die, White Warrior. You will die.
I will reach the Sisters of Fate, and I will use your wings to do so.
The sisters will not allow you, a fallen god, to
Oh,
be
that's
my
stupid.
So yeah, I don't know.
I'm gonna pretend.
Kratos and Icarus
I'm gonna
fall
pretend
down
the
into
Rizio
chasm
player
and a
didn't
short
just do the
mid-air
stupidest
boss
thing
fight
they could have
commences.
done.
That ends with Kratos ripping the artificial wings out of Icarus's back so that he can fly safely into this chamber, while Icarus drops screaming down into the deepest depths of hell. That's what you get for being a weirdo, and don't forget it. Here is a fun coincidence. Metroid Prime 3 released the same year as God of War 2, and also featured a boss battle that took place entirely while falling down into an endless chasm. Except that one was against a giant techno-laser dragon, instead of a smelly old man, so it was better. 2007, another very good year for video games. Anyway, moving on. After the encounter with Icarus, Kratos once again finds himself trapped in the underworld, this time in the prison chamber of Atlas, yet another Titan. There is a common misconception that, in Greek mythology, Atlas is said to hold up the entire Earth. In the original story, though, he actually only holds up the sky. The developers of God of War 2 either didn't do their homework or, more likely, decided that the misconception is actually cooler than the original, because in this game's version of the story, Atlas is in fact, apparently, imprisoned by Zeus and forced to hold up the entire world. This is another one of my favorite areas in the game. The whole section is basically one big platforming sequence, in which Kratos has to hop around both the outside and inside of Atlas's mountain-sized body in order to reach the top. The interior of his body is really bizarre. It is a mix of stone and fire and bone and flesh, so you're jumping and flying around tendons and spinal cords and rivers of lava. There's this one puzzle where you actually have to push a piece of his spine out of place. I just love the visual design here. It is so grotesque and alien, like something out of a horror movie. When you do reach the top, Atlas, who has also apparently not been notified about their new alliance, tries to kill Kratos. At one point, he actually blames Kratos for his current circumstances, and the reason why will be revealed in the prequel game, Chains of Olympus, which did not release for a whole year after this one. Atlas is also the character who, in a very flashy CGI pre-rendered cutscene, reveals the true cataclysmic horror that was the Titanomachy, as the Titans had their very souls ripped out of their bodies by Hades, before being cast down into the deepest layer of the underworld, the abyssal eternal prison of Tartarus. In the present, Kratos manages to convince the Titan that they are actually friends, and so Atlas pops Kratos back up into the chasm entrance where he was ambushed by Icarus. At this point, we are closer to our final goal than ever before. Somewhere in this fortress, the sisters are waiting for us. After you get through the entrance, where you have to deal with a fairly irritating spinning room, spiky floor, endlessly respawning enemies puzzle, you reach this overlook, where you can see the central spire on the other side of this chasm. The player has to find some way to reach that spire. You may also notice that the spire has a bit of a feathery appearance, as if it were not composed of stone at all. How intriguing. From the overlook, the player has to travel to the two auditoriums I described before. The one where you torture the priest and crush their skulls to serve as blood sacrifices to the Sisters of Fate. This causes the wings of the spire to
I just realized how stupid of an idea this is as a Ryziel player.
All along. And this sacrifice also leads to an audience with a pre-recorded holographic version of Lachesis. And would you look at that, she's got her goddamn tatas hanging out. Well, one tata, actually. Freaking hell, Santa Monica. How the heck am I supposed to edit this video when I cannot even fully show the main villain of the game? You horny bastards. In her second pre-recorded message, Lachesis commands Kratos to resurrect a dead phoenix from its ashes in order to complete the final step of his journey. This leads to a series of what are, by far, the most difficult and most frustrating puzzle and platforming sections of the whole game, including that one I described earlier, where you have to push the block across the room against the waves of fire and the infinite respawning enemies. Very annoying. But if you manage to accomplish all of that, congratulations, you have given birth to a brand new baby phoenix.
Oh, I still get detonator back, even though it got turned face down. Never mind, it's not. I didn't do stupid.
And then it waits patiently on the other side of the chasm to carry you into the feathery and foul lair of the Sisters of Fate. On your way over there, Kratos encounters yet another fellow champion who is seeking the sisters. In the shadows of this chamber, his face remains hidden, so we do not know who it is yet. It is a very simple and easy battle, during which the champion keeps calling out things like, "I've come too far, I can't lose now." But apparently he can lose now, because this fight ends with Kratos tossing the guy through the wall and impaling him on his swords. But look, In the light of day, it is revealed that this champion is actually that Spartan warrior from the beginning of the game, the one who Kratos commanded to return home and defend Sparta. What is he doing here? Well, this warrior, now known by the pretty slick title of the last hero of Sparta, explains that the city of Sparta has been destroyed and its entire population annihilated by Zeus as punishment for Kratos' bloody conquest across Greece. After the city's destruction, this guy took it on himself to journey to the island of creation in an attempt to change the fate of his home and family. Once again, I love this concept of parallel journeys, that Kratos is not the only hero trying to reach the Sisters of Fate, and in some ways, he is not even the most impressive of them. This Spartan soldier is not a demigod. He does not have gifts given to him by the gods or magical powers bestowed upon him by the Titans. He does not have Kratos' decades of experience or superhuman strength. He is just an ordinary soldier fighting with ordinary weapons. And yet, look how far he came, how close he got to the end. Through sheer grit and determination and strength of will, he even made it further than Perseus or the barbarian king or the smelly old Icarus. If you pay attention while exploring the island, you can actually occasionally see him in the background, fending off monsters during his own adventure. I have always thought that a spin-off where you play as this character and you experience his journey would have made for a fantastic God of War game. I have always wished the developers would have done a game based on a side story like that, instead of adding more and more prequels to Kratos' story. But whatever, let's get back to the game. Remember back at the beginning when I talked about how, having lost everything else, Kratos adopted the warriors of Sparta as his new family. They became his final connection to the rest of the world, his sole reason for living. Well, now that final connection has been severed. Once again, his family has been destroyed by the machinations of a mad god of Olympus. He has lost his last reason to keep on fighting. And so, for the second time in his life, Kratos gives up. He loses all hope. When he is attacked by this hideous, squiddy tentacle monster after the death of the last Spartan, he does not fight back. If you press a button on the controller to try and get him to defend himself, the on-screen character actually refuses to budge. Instead, in a fury, he cries out, "I am tired of the lies of the gods." He allows the Kraken to grab him in one of its giant slimy tentacles and awaits his fate. But at the last second, right as he is about to be devoured and killed, Gaia once again intervenes. She sends him a new vision and speaks to him in the form of his late wife, Lysandra, a deeply manipulative strategy. She persuades him to keep on fighting so that he can accomplish his revenge against Zeus, which is really him accomplishing her revenge against Zeus. And moreover, she gives him the actual fire that Zeus used to burn down Sparta, which causes his rage ability to dramatically grow in power. With this newfound power, he breaks free from the Kraken's grasp, and so begins the 6th major boss fight of the game. The Kraken is something of a rarity in the God of War series, as one of the few boss battles not based on Greek mythology. As far as I know, there is no Kraken in Greek myth. Funny enough, it is more of a Scandinavian legend, and so would have made more sense to appear in the later games. Either way, it is a really good boss fight. Kratos has to dodge its attacks, wait for one of its tentacles to get stuck in the architecture, and then do some platforming and quicktime events to slice the tentacle off its body. Once you've done this twice, the Kraken will grab the last Spartan's corpse and eat it. And then you just have to knock it off the side of the balcony and impale its icky, squiddy face on this bridge. Pretty gruesome. And now you are only one Phoenix ride away from the final lair of the Sisters of Fate, a building lodged inside the gut of this giant bird called the Temple of the Fates. This temple is frozen in time when you first arrive, so you have to go through a fairly elaborate puzzle involving ringing these 2 bells in order to get time moving again, so you can smash a hole in the statue's face and proceed inside. Before you reach these sisters
Didn't mean
themselves,
to.
you pass through this
Doesn't
room
matter.
where 3 prophetic murals have been painted on the walls. each accompanied by different text. The first reads, "The all-consuming battle between the Titans and the Olympians rages on," which is of course what happens at the start of God of War 3. The second, "A lone soul surveys the wake of carnage that surrounds him," which is how God of War 3 ends. And the third and most surprising reads, "Three travelers heading to an unknown destiny." Unlike the other two, this third prophecy has never come true in any of the games. The mural itself appears to show the biblical story of the three magi journeying to the location of the newborn baby Jesus. Supposedly, the original plan for the series was for Kratos to actually become one of the three wise men later in his life. And after the destruction of all the ancient pantheons, he would join with counterparts from the Egyptian and Norse mythologies to usher in the new Christian religion, which would be pretty crazy. I don't think this is still the plan for the future of the franchise. Anyway, after this, Kratos finally reaches the Sisters of Fate, and I am not going to discuss that confrontation in detail in this video. Instead, I am going to do a separate video all about the Sisters of Fate. I will say only one thing here. I have spent a lot of time in this video describing the confrontations with the other Greek champions as random. But what if they were not random at all? What if it was fate? What if these Sisters of Fate have been manipulating the lives of all these different people, not to ensure destiny follows its proper course, but specifically to create a new destiny of their choosing? For now, all that matters is that it is a fantastic boss fight, one of the best in the series. After Kratos defeats all three of the Sisters of Fate, the stupid half-naked Lachesis, gothy I wear too much black eyeliner Atropos, and the hideous I have way too many sagging boobies Clotho, he seizes control of his personal thread of fate, and uses it to travel back into the past and ambush Zeus during his betrayal back in Rhodes. I mentioned much earlier in the video that this time travel leads to some confusing plot holes. After traveling back in time, there are now two Kratoses in the past. The one who just got killed by Zeus and the one from the future. The Kratos from the future proceeds to engage in a long battle against Zeus, meaning that this version of Zeus is never able to destroy either the city of Sparta or the Spartan legions, which also means that Kratos technically still has something to live for, even though he continues to behave
I don't
as
think
if
there's
he
a way
doesn't.
out of this.
But the really big question is, what happened to the other Kratos? The one we just saw get killed? Does he just stay dead, trapped down in the underworld? But that cannot be true. Because if past Kratos never journeys to the island of creation, then future Kratos can never exist in the first place. But the past has already been changed by future Kratos' arrival, which means we must be in some kind of branching timeline scenario. But that still does not answer the question of what happens to the other Kratos. The game itself never addresses any of these problems. So there is just a huge, confusing question mark hanging over the whole story, and it is only going to get even more confusing later on. Anyway, ignoring all of that, the true final battle of the game commences as Kratos seizes control of the Blade of Olympus. This battle has basically three phases, though it moves fairly fluidly back and forth between those three phases. In the first, just like both Ares and Kratos before him, Zeus grows to super duper huge size. And the strategy here is to create blast waves by killing these other monsters, which then harm Zeus, allowing Kratos to get in close and absorb his power using the Blade of Olympus, turning Zeus's trick against him, causing him to shrink back down to a more manageable size. Oh, and by the way, once again, just like in the first game's final battle against Ares, the player is forced to use an unfamiliar weapon instead of the chain swords you were probably using for the entire rest of the game. This time around, I think the Blade of Olympus is much faster and has a better moveset, and also the fight against Zeus is not nearly as difficult as the one against Ares was, so I don't find it nearly as annoying. Still, it is a weird decision by the developers. Anyway, the second phase is a fairly straightforward smash-off, but the third phase is a little more interesting. Zeus actually takes the Blade of Olympus away from Kratos, and then the player has to use the chain swords to beat him and take the sword back. After a final, tough quick-time event, Kratos prepares to impale Zeus on the Blade of Olympus, destroying the King of the Gods once and for all. However, at the final moment, Athena reappears and throws herself between Kratos and Zeus in an attempt to stop the fighting, declaring that she does not want to fight Kratos, but it is still her duty to defend Olympus. This ends with her being the one accidentally impaled on the blade, which seems to genuinely upset Kratos, while Zeus takes advantage of the distraction to escape. As she dies, Athena reveals the truth. Kratos is the son of Zeus. Zeus's decision to kill Kratos was driven by a fear of fate. Just as Zeus once overthrew his father, he fears that one day his son will overthrow him. And of course, by his actions, he has just ensured that that prophecy will come true. Athena pleads with Kratos to end his quest for vengeance, for, she says, no son should kill his own father. This plea falls on deaf ears as Kratos recommits himself to not only the death of Zeus, but of any god who dares stand in his way. If all of Olympus will deny him, then all of Olympus will fall. And believe it or not, the game is not over yet. After Zeus escapes, Kratos returns to the future, back to the Temple of Fates, and once again uses the threads of fate to travel back in time. Except now he goes much further into the past, all the way back to the age of the original Titanomachy, the age of the first war between the Titans and the Olympians. Once there, he meets with Gaia, who says that she has been waiting for him. Kratos tells her that the Titans are destined to lose the war in this past age, but that if they will come with him into the future and fight at his side, to a time when both Ares and Athena are already dead, and Zeus is weakened by his battle with Kratos, they will stand a far better chance of victory. And so that is exactly what they do, which of course leads to an even bigger plot hole. If the Titans were never defeated in the past, that changes literally everything. The entire course of history in this world should be transformed. Whatever the case, Kratos leads the Titans back to the present and into an invasion of Mount Olympus itself. The game ends with the Olympians shocked to find that their mortal enemies have returned. A new chapter in the apocalyptic war between Olympian and Titan has begun, and there is a final shot of Gaia climbing the mountain, while Kratos, still wielding the Blade of Olympus, rides on her back as he declares,
Called by
Zeus, your son has returned! I bring the destruction of Olympus!
This is an awesome conclusion to the game, setting up a truly epic confrontation between Kratos and all of Olympus in the third game. And this is where my very long retrospective of God of War 2 ends. God of War 2 is one of the best action-adventure video games ever developed. In a lot of ways, in terms of the scale, the spectacle, the setting, the fantastic places you explore, the boss fights, the puzzles, the platforming, I think it still outshines even the Norse games. After replaying the entire God of War series in the past few months, I think God of War 2 might still be the best game in the whole franchise. Sure, God of War 3 has better action, and there is no doubt in my mind that the story and characters of God of War 4 are miles
there you go, it still got
miles
negated.
ahead. But as an overall package, as an adventure game, God of War 2 still stands shoulder to shoulder with the best in the genre, even nearly 2 decades after its release. God of War 2 was named by critics as the swan song of an entire generation of video games for good reason, because God of War 2 is still a phenomenal video game.
Well, this is rather bad. Maybe I should have let Kiki Nagashi Nafusho live. I guess it's the only way I'm winning. How does pure how does pure Ryzeal work? Because apparently that build is becoming more popular. Which I don't understand. Because, did you see that end board? 3 destructions, 1 summon negate, and that's it. It is a very breakable board, as I am proving. Well, I won. Yeah, right, the Ryzeal matchup is so much harder. Before I go have lunch. I actually think in YG Omega specifically, main decking Metal Tronus is actually kind of a stupid idea. Because people play a lot of decks in these online places, you know? If we're in a tournament setting, then yeah, this main deck choice makes a little bit more sense, but as it stands, it really doesn't make any sense. I think. So I'm siding out the Metal Tronus. Triple Tactics really isn't worth it. I'm barely siding it. This deck doesn't need it. But you know, Mereologic Aggregator is a Dark Cybers. Do we really need 2 detonators? I think we're fine running nothing but 1-ofs. Yeah, I'm not really using this. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 on a 45 sized deck. I like it. Yeah, this ups the consistency. I increased the deck size, but because I added bonfire, the math still says more consistent, baby. I really don't like running Mo Charmy in this deck. But I do believe it's rational to bring. Dimensional Barrier doesn't hit as hard against Fiendsmith. And I'm not running them even as cross-out targets. I think this is fine pattern.